Bönninghausen is one of the oldest homeopaths. Much of what he has been saying and inventing, creating a very creative, innovative mind is still relevant today. And so next slide, please. 2 slides. As an introduction, I just want to briefly remind you who Clemens Bönninghausen was. Next slide, please. So very briefly, he was born in 1785 or 86. Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot see the slides on the screen, so I just tell this to you. This is one technical hurdle left, explaining why I need to use my glasses here. And as some of you may know, he was sick, very sick, tuberculosis, which became purulent. This was in the year 1827, and actually he wrote a farewell letter to one of his best friends, Karl Weyer, farewell letter, saying, I'm dying. And fortunately for homeopathy, for Bönninghausen, Weyer knew about homeopathy and told him, why don't you try pulsatilla? And pulsatilla did the trick, cured him, convinced him, and got him really enthusiastic about homeopathy. And so, as you know, he became one of the most important homeopaths in the history of homeopathy, I would like to say. You may also know that Bönninghausen was a botanist before, had several professions and trainings, not a medical training. And it is interesting to know that the success of his practice and also of homeopathy in his hands was such that in 1845 King Willem IV gave him the rights and the title of a physician. Okay? And then eventually he died in 1864 at the age of 79. Okay, so that's a short history to explain what the monument Bönninghausen is. Next slide. Now, Bönninghausen is very often put in opposition to Kent, because you well know that he made a repertory, and that repertory is going to be one of the main ingredients of my speech today. But you also know Kent made another repertory, which in the 1900s, 20s, 40s, 60s, etc., was very popular, is still very popular. Kent's repertory, as you also know, has been the basis, the basic structure, the basic content of the current super repertories, if I may call it like this, like synthesis in the complete repertory. And let's say vaguely in the past century, Bönninghausen was a little bit forgotten, was deemed to be less important. And this is why I would like to oppose some of these ideas of Bönninghausen with Kent's ideas. And the first angle I will take, next slide please, is some explanation about information that is a symptom or is not a symptom. Now this title may be a little bit enigmatic. Information is a symptom or not a symptom. And so I will straight away, next slide, show a little example. When a patient comes to you, they tell you 100 sentences. And they say, my headache is this, my neighbor is that, my job is this, my wife is this. Sentences, information. Okay? But what we really need to prescribe are symptoms. And it is probably one of the hardest lessons students in homeopathy, beginning homeopaths, need to learn, is that not every information a patient is telling is a symptom. That is a very important thing, because they hear that the patient says whatever, and they know, oh, it's a rubric, look it up in the repertory and use it. That is a very regretful mistake. And so the next step we need to do is to understand what is the difference. Next, you hit enter one time, please. Yes, exactly, it works. Thanks, Luke. What is the difference between a symptom and the information that the patient is giving? Well, the easy way to define this is saying the information has to have some frequency. If someone says to you, I like to go to the seaside. Yeah, you know the symptom, but is it a symptom? No, because you need frequency. They need to say, I go every weekend to the seaside. And then it becomes a symptom, okay? Frequency and intensity. I have a cold in my knees. Just today or just now, while I asking you 20 times what else, what else, what else? We need frequency and intensity. So this is the difference. The first difference, the most important difference between what the patient is saying and what is important in homeopathy. Hit enter one more time. This is what we call the intensity of interrogation. It's a very important core idea in the analysis, in the whole analysis of the case. And the first person who has expressed this to my knowledge is Margaret Tyler from England, and then also George Vitulkas, who introduced the term underlining. You may be familiar with the underlining, the story of the patient, and then you review it, or you add the underlining of the symptoms, strong, very strong, etc., etc. And this is important because even if George Vitulkas introduced the word underlining very recently, even Margaret Tyler was someone of the past century, this idea that information needs to be looked at through the glasses of frequency and intensity is an old idea. It is an old idea, and it is reflected in our literature. Enter. It is reflected by the degrees in the repertory. Okay? So this introduction is to explain you, to make you aware how important degrees in the repertory are. Next slide. And so we have the patient on one side who may say, I like to go to the seaside. Everybody in Belgium likes to go to the seaside. Or I like to go to the seaside every weekend. I must go to the seaside every weekend. Okay? And on the other side, the degrees in the repertory. So you begin to see the analogy between intensity of interrogation, the patient, and the degrees in the repertory. And yes, indeed, this is why we need to be precise in the attribution of degrees in the repertory. And so, in my first little section of this conversation, I will explain a little bit about degrees. And, you know, to be clear, in whatever I will be saying next, the highest degree is expressed by the highest number. I know it's sometimes done in the reverse way, but just to have a possibility of easy communication, be aware when I say highest degree, I mean fourth degree, and it's the strongest. Okay? First, we look into Bönninghausen. Next slide. This is a facsimile of the original therapeutic pocketbook of Bönninghausen, and you will see that some remedies, such as calcarea, is just normal font. This is the first degree. Okay. Then there is another remedy next to it, natrum, where you see that the letters are a little bit separated. This is the second degree. Okay. Then the ars, ARS, is italics. This is the third degree. And then the pulse, there is some more space between the letters again. This is the fourth degree. So in this symptom, these are the fourth degree. Well, you may say it's not always easy to remember or to observe, but look, the next line, for example, the causticum, and you see the C-A-U-S-T are written really apart from each other, which is quite different from the aurum, say for the phosphorus, or for the veratrum at the end of this rubric. You see the veratrum is the spaces. So these are the 4 degrees. The type, right? The type, the font of it. Okay. Next slide. And what is the definition of the degrees for Bönninghausen? Well, the 4th degree, the highest, the strongest, okay, is just appearing when the remedy has clearly cured the symptom almost every time, so very often. Okay, enter. Then the 3rd degree is when the remedy has clearly cured the symptom without any doubt. So we don't say almost all the time. It's just one or a few times, okay? But very clear. Enter. Then the second degree is when the remedy has repeatedly caused the symptoms in the provings. So the second degree in Bönninghausen is related to the provings. Okay. We go on with the clinic in the first degree. Enter. Where the remedy has cured the symptom without doubt. Without doubt. And there is even a degree 0 where the normal font enter, where the normal font is put between brackets, and where there is some doubt left. This is like the hypothetical degree in Bönninghausen. But basically, we can say there are 4 degrees in Bönninghausen's approach. When we summarize, because we try to understand the way that they have been reasoning, next slide, we understand that there are basically 2 variables. First, is the remedy confirmed in the clinic? And then you see the different possibilities with the degrees going from 0 to 4. And then for the proving, there's only one use in Bönninghausen, which is the second degree. Okay? Try to remember this a little bit, and I jump straight away a few years ahead to Kent degrees. Next slide, please. And in Kent, we have 3 degrees, classical Kentian degrees. This is the starting point of the discussion. And the Kentian degrees, the bold, the highest, I call this the 3rd degree. The highest number is the strongest remedy indication, is when nearly all provers have been affected and cured extensively. So the difference we see immediately between the definition of degree in Kent and Bönninghausen is that Kent speaks about the clinic, but also about the proving. Okay? And the same in the second degree. It is a few provers and a few cases. You see? When the remedy has been confirmed, both sides a few times. Then the first degree of Kent gives different possibilities, where you see that he basically is saying if the symptom is appearing only in the proving, maybe it gets into the repertory. If the symptom is curing only one case, maybe it gets into the repertory. So Kent was quite, how can I say this, quite generous with the way to add symptoms to the repertory. And then, of course, a few more combinations. Now, if we compare, next slide, the variables that are appearing here, we see on one side Kent with the clinically cured symptoms, extensively, occasionally, and just a few homeopaths, with or without proving, doesn't matter. And we go from 3 to 1. This corresponds in a way quite closely to Bönninghausen, because extensively, you could say, is like in almost every case. And then we go down in the degrees in Bönninghausen as well. It is only on the level of the proving symptoms that we see a quite important difference, because Bönninghausen, right side of the table, only speaks about adding a remedy to the repertory when it's repeatedly appearing in the proving, while Kent says even if it appears one time in a proving but was strong, you can put it. Or a few provers, it becomes a 2. Or nearly all provers, so there's this gradation. So this brings us to the idea that although there is this big similarity, the same variables are accounted for, there are some differences as well in the approach of Kent and Bönninghausen. And for the little conversation that I will be having tonight, I would like to say that it's important that you remember this table and you see that in fact the way that Bönninghausen has been indicating degrees is totally aligned to the degrees of cure, to the frequency of cures, to the relevance of the remedy in the practice. I will come back to that later on. Okay, next slide. What is this slide? Wait a minute. Yes, this is the correspondence slide, where you can see that on the basis of this analysis, we could even imagine a conversion table between the degrees of Kent and Bönninghausen. Okay? So degrees are important because we, in general, I would like to say in general, we have this idea, just to quote Margaret Tyler, what is strong in the patient should be strong in the remedy. Yeah? And one easy example for you to understand this, if you have a patient with a very, 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 very strong fear of dark, child, cannot go to the garage in the daylight, cannot go to bed or to the upper floor alone, etc. Whenever there is some darkness, afraid, screaming, cannot be convinced, etc., etc. Well, if there is a remedy that has some fear of the dark, like Maitre-Mure, or there is a remedy which has a very strong fear of dark, Stramonium, the fact that the fear of dark is so strong in this child may mean that there is maybe some more importance for Stramonium in this child. This is the correspondence of intensities between the patient and the repertory. So the importance of degrees. But I'll come back to this. First, I'll take a second angle, and this is about an interesting symptom. What is an interesting symptom? Okay, well, you all know these patients, and they come to you, they're happy finally after waiting for a few months for your waiting list, and they say, I have a headache, I have a backache. Yes? Yeah? Give me the remedy. They don't know we need more information. Eh? If the patient is just being vague and can only say this, we cannot help a lot. Eh? And so different homeopaths, including Bönninghausen, have been reflecting, so how do we make a symptom interesting? Eh? Headache is a symptom, but it's not interesting. If someone says headache, there's 600 possibilities. No, nothing. Next. So the Luke, enter, yeah. So the idea of Bönninghausen was the so-called complete symptom. I don't know if you heard about it, some of you probably. So just to remind you, next slide, the complete symptom is the symptom that has a location, a sensation, and a modality. Location, where is it? What is happening in the eye? There's a stitching. And what is the modality? It is better from cold water. Okay? This is a complete symptom. And the patient comes to you and says, pain in the eye, give me a remedy. No. Fever, give me a remedy. No. What we want is pain in the eye, stitching, better from cold water. This makes us happy and helps us to prescribe homeopathically. Okay? And of course, next, we can then look, we can then look at another symptom, which is the concomitant, and which again, we try to make as complete as possible with a location, sensation, and modality. Okay? Now, this was the approach of Bönninghausen, the 3 legs to define a symptom, to make a symptom interesting. And in fact, Kent has done a very similar thing in his repertory. Next slide. The STMELD, smelled, the Czech word. Sites, times, modalities, sensations, localizations. So when there is a symptom, is there a site to it? Is there a time for it? Is there an extension, etc.? You may know that in synthesis, we have put together the descriptions and the modalities in one alphabet. And so to the right side of the table, you see the sequence in synthesis, which is site and times, modalities, descriptions in one alphabet, followed by the extensions and then the localizations. Next slide. If then we compare these 2 approaches of Kent and Bönninghausen to make a symptom interesting, we see that they're just like very much the same. Kent went a little bit more into detail, but really it's the same thing. Next slide. If you have a symptom like eye pain, worse in bed and it's a stitching pain, Well, the fact that it's in the eye is the localization of, this is a Kentian symptom, of course, but the fact that it is in the eye, you will find in Bönninghausen. The fact that it's in bed aggravated, it's a modality you will find in Bönninghausen. And then you have the stitching pain, which is a sensation you will find in Bönninghausen, okay? So the people have taken, what are these green lines there? Okay, anyway. They have taken a different approach to express the same idea. So that is very interesting. So the opposition between Kent and Bönninghausen is not so big. Now, to move from here, I would like to introduce one other issue, and that is the generalization of symptoms. I think this is probably one of the most important sections in the lecture. Next slide. And you know, next slide, there are two symptom formats. In fact, Kent's symptom format, let's admit it, was quite different from the symptom format of Bönninghausen. Kent said, when there is a specific symptom, we put the specific symptom in the repertory. Like pain in the eye, when turning the eye sideways, you just put eye pain, turning eye sideways. Just the whole detail, okay? Now, if we go to Bönninghausen, you never find such a symptom. If the patient has some kind of symptom like this, you would find motion of the eyes. That's it. So in Bönninghausen, you find more general symptoms, okay? And then, starting from this, how shall I say, architecture of the repertory, we go one step further to the generalization, next slide, which is done in two ways by Kent and Bönninghausen. In Kent, it's the famous number 3 that is important. When someone has a pain in the eyes, turning the eyes upward and sideways, and maybe also going in the open air, then even if the remedy is not reported in general pain in the eye without modalities, Kent will add it to the eye pain in general. Okay, so this is the meaning of the 3. When there are 3 modalities, sub-rubrics, then Kent suggests and has been adding the remedy to the super rubric as well. 3 or more, of course. Bönninghausen, as I say, there were no specific symptoms. So we have just this motion of the eyes. So what did he do with the generalization? And then we have this idea that Bönninghausen, in fact, has been generalizing all the symptoms in the repertory. What is meant by generalizing all the symptoms? Well, if we still look at the same example, you have a pain in the eye, turning the eyes, etc. So any rubric, any remedy that would appear in the sub-rubric would also be put in eye pain. It would also be put in turning, whatever the turning was. This is supposedly the generalization of Bönninghausen. I give another, maybe even clearer example in the next slide, where you have the main rubric of a pain above the left eye in the morning on waking. Now in Kent's language, above the left eye is part of the forehead, okay? But you understand that there are many related super-rubrics to which we could generalize the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 remedies of this rubric. We could drop the waking, it's in the morning, not only on waking. We could drop the morning and say it's on waking anytime. We could drop the left, say it's above the eyes. We could say it's just, this remedy should also appear in head pain, morning, on waking, etc. So this is what some people believe is the generalization of symptoms. We generalize the remedy to all the related super-rubrics. Okay? You understand that when we do this, look at number 8, etc., etc., we will end up the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 remedies of the main rubric, the first line on the screen, into many rubrics. And I'm afraid when we do this, we create like a complete diluted repertory. Okay? So is this what Bönninghausen has been doing? This is the question I would like to address. Next slide. Has Bönninghausen been generalizing all the symptoms? Is this the way that he has been working? Well, I need to take you back to the beginning. So remember, he suggested the idea of the complete symptom, which we just explained. Very valuable to remember. He also suggested to emphasize the main symptom. We must find a remedy that covers the problem of the patient. Some constitutional prescribers go too far away at times. The remedy must cover the main symptom. Okay? And then there is this third idea of Bönninghausen, which is called the genius symptom. And this is also one of the ideas that is not so very well known, and I would like to elaborate. Next slide. Some people even say he never spoke about genius symptom. No, he did speak about genius symptom in many places. Here is one quote, and look at the importance he gives. For those who doubt, who like, the German is on top. The basic underlined part has been translated into English, and it says the genius of the remedy must correspond exactly to the genius of the disease of the patient. The genius has to correspond, not all the symptoms. The genius has to correspond. Okay, this is what Bönninghausen writes. And where do we go from here? Well, let me rephrase a little bit what is meant by the genius remedy, the genius symptom. Can you go to the next slide? We speak about the genius symptom when it appears in many provers, when this has been cured many times, or when it's a stitching, this appears in many locations, or when it's a modality such as better from pressure, it appears many times, many occurrences, or when it's a location, there are many complaints at this location. Then we say it's a genius symptom because we see this amel from pressure, we see this forehead, we see it again and again and again in the proving, in the case. You see, we're always speaking very parallel case and proving. And this is for your practice to understand. I'm going to give you one more example to make it really clear in the next slide. So when you have these three symptoms, pulsation in the forehead on the left side, stitching forehead in the morning, burning forehead better from cold air, Bönninghausen did not use, let's say these are three different remedies, A, B, C. No, I'm sorry. These are the same remedy. I'm sorry, I must say these are the same remedy. Well, Bönninghausen did not add this remedy because of this. To pulsation, to forehead, to left side, to stitching, to morning, to burning, to better from cold air, to these more general symptoms. This is what some people believe. No, I'm sorry, it's totally wrong. On the basis of these symptoms, the way Bönninghausen generalized the information, enter one more time, is by just adding this remedy to forehead. Why? Can you see it from the example? Forehead is the genius that is running through these three symptoms. For this one and the same remedy, these three symptoms of the same remedy, forehead is the thing that is important. One time it's pulsating, another time it's stitching, it's burning. It's not the genius. You see? So this means, if you understand what I'm saying, that if the generalization is done in this way, by making genius symptoms, we'll be having less symptoms instead of many more. You agree? And now you may disagree because this may be the first time that you heard this. And I have a very simple way. You can go back to the German literature, of course, and read all about genius symptom in the way that Bönninghausen has been explaining it. But there is a very simple way to prove that Bönninghausen has been acting in this way. And this is, next slide, by reminding you that Bönninghausen wrote two repertories, not one repertory, two repertories. The first repertory is the Therapeutisches Taschenbuch, which is the therapeutic pocketbook, the main one, the core of this conversation. Okay? But then he also wrote the Systematisch Alphabetisches Repertorium, which is a systematic alphabetic repertory released in two parts, antipsoric remedies and non-antipsoric remedies. Okay? So these two repertories, this is what he created. Today we only speak about the pocketbook. But nevertheless, let's go back to the history. And can you go and show the next slide? And there you will see that the therapeutic pocketbook counts 378 pages in the original German edition, and that the systematic alphabetical repertory counts 617 pages. So yes, the number of pages has doubled. And the other repertory is much bigger. The therapeutic pocketbook is like this size, and the systematisch alphabetisch is like this size. So it's even more. It's more than doubled. But enter one more time. I don't know if you have seen already, or your critical eye has been looking at the last line of this table. The timeline is opposite, my friends, opposite. Bönninghausen first made the systematical alphabetical repertory with 617 pages released in two steps, 30 to 35, and then spent 11 years not to generalize all these symptoms into 2, 3, 4, 5 times the most completely repertory you can imagine, but to trim it, to summarize it, to go to the core of the symptoms, to the core of the remedy. And so this is why, after 11 years after the release of the systematic alphabetical repertory, from which he said the concept is wrong, I created a new concept, that he writes this, to create the therapeutic pocketbook in 1846. Okay, you see? So this is why I believe you should follow this idea and be aware that the next slide, that the therapeutic...
Frederik, can I ask a quick question that we just had come in?
Yeah.
Can you give the source where Bönninghausen elaborates on the philosophical background of the genius symptoms?
It's one of the slides at the bottom. You
Okay,
go a few slides back, it's at the bottom. Yeah, you see?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So can you go back to this slide, which is just the one next to the timeline graph? Yes, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. Perfect. So all this explanation, this excitation to tell you Bönninghausen did not generalize the symptoms in the way many people believe. He did not dilute the repertory. No, he condensed it into genius symptoms. And why am I emphasizing this? Because this is one of the two reasons why this repertory, and it's a Kantian guy who's speaking, you know, I'm training and my work is Kantian. This is the reason why Bönninghausen's therapeutic pocketbook is still valid today, because it contains the information of the remedies that is the core information. When you have a pulsatilla and you find it, you search it through the therapeutic pocketbook, you will find it because you will be guided and be using the genius symptoms, the core symptoms, the more important symptoms. And if you have done your work and you have said, my patient has motion aggravate, and my patient has stitching, and my patient is thirsty, whatever, you will find the remedy in the therapeutic pocketbook, even if the patient has some more detailed symptoms. The second reason why this pocketbook is very valid still is because, as you may remember from the introduction, it reflects the degrees to such a precise way, to such a precise way to the clinic, repertory clinic link is very close. And so, am I now becoming, changing from a Kantian to a Bönninghausen? Not really. I think we must have tools We must have tools. If patients provide us with general symptoms, we will be more easy finding a solid remedy through the Bönninghausen approach, because we use the core information of their remedies. But if a patient tells us a very specific symptom, it will even not exist. It may be difficult to find or to how shall I say, dissect in the Bönninghausen way. We can use Kent and find the symptom there. Okay? Now, two people, next slide, have been making a major contribution recently to this Bönninghausen approach, which is reviving a lot. The first one, next slide, is George Dimitriadis from Australia, born in 1985, has been working on Bönninghausen pretty much of his life, is the founder of the Sydney Association, and you find his website there. So what are the contributions? And I apologize beforehand that I will be rather brief, but I think I have to give you this introduction to make you understand the importance of the work of Dimitriadis, the work of HEINER FREI. So I will be rather brief and summarize that he has created what he calls the TBR, the Bönninghausen repertory. And I think the emphasis on the, it's between the two, it's this one, which is the more important one. And that is an English retranslation of the therapeutic pocketbook by Bönninghausen, which was already translated by Allen. And then he started doing a lot of things, I must say. But George Dimitriadis has taken care to retranslate from the German to the English. He studied German, became very fluent and knowledgeable in German, and has been basing himself on the original manuscript. Now, while he was doing that, he has been explaining the rubrics, the symptoms. And this is very useful, because in this therapeutic pocketbook, being a condensed repertory, we have only 2,600 symptoms. As a reference for you, Kent has 450,000 symptoms, and synthesis by now 190,000. So this is a very small number of symptoms, general symptoms, not generalized. Okay. And then he has been putting endnotes, and just the sheer number of pages of these endnotes, 69 pages, indicate how much work he has been spending on that. Is that useful? Yes. I'm going next slide. Give you one example here of such a symptom note where he is commenting on the rubrics that are related to bloating food, food that creates bloating. And where you can read it here, where he says this should be compared to this and this rubric, maybe should be put together and blah, 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 and quotes the German, etc. Very, very precise. And in fact, it's not only very interesting to, flatulent food is the correct expression in English, not bloating food, okay? Sorry. This doesn't only show you the possibility to understand each symptom better, but, next slide, while doing this, he has been restructuring a little bit the whole content of Bönninghausen's pocketbook. And this is, we can show many examples, but I think one nice example is here to the left. You see the original chapters of the therapeutic pocketbook, and it is created by Bönninghausen, okay? And to the right, a little bigger, you see the 4 sections of the therapeutic pocketbook by Dimitriadis, which is very clean and very practical. We have local symptoms. What is the word he uses? Can't read it here.
Regional.
Regional, yes. Then systematic, and then the generals, and then the modalities. Okay, so George really did a lot of work to make that information as accessible and as retrievable as possible. And that is very valuable, because if you are using this approach, you will probably not be using the 2,600 symptoms. Most of the time you'll be using like 1,000 or less of those symptoms. So if you take the little effort to every now and then, when there is a symptom you don't understand, because maybe some of them you will understand because of the precise translation, but when you take the time every now and then to read the symptom note, you will become very savvy in using these key symptoms containing core genius remedies, and be very successful in your prescriptions based on the general approach. Then the last contribution I would like to quote on George is the concordances, the relationships of remedies, as you can see to the right side, which was part of the original publication in 1846, but which has been updated in 53, and which George also incorporated in his version of the therapeutic pocketbook. Now, on the next slide, we show you that this section, you can find it under the maps in Reader Opus, and with one click you can open the three parts: the pocketbook, the concordances, and then also the theoretical explanation on the pocketbook itself and on the method approach of Bönninghausen by George Dimitriadis. Okay. Now I'm going on to FREI, the other person. Some of you may have heard already. So HEINER FREI is a Swiss pediatrician who was, or still is, very interested in ADHD, and who has invented polarity analysis. That's the golden word. In doing this, he has been very research-minded all the time. He's been awarded many research awards. By the way, this is just one of them, just to show you. And you can find all the information on HEINER FREI's website, Swiss website. Polarity analysis, next slide, leads us to the idea of polar symptoms. Again, some people say, what the heck is this? Does it exist? It's too new, it doesn't exist. No. In fact, Bönninghausen called it the negative symptoms. Negative. And just like the example you see there, there is the pulsatilla, which, as you know, is better, strongly better from open air. The negative one of that would be worse open air, opposite modality. This is a polar symptom. And as far as I'm aware, it is Gipser who first used the word polarities, indicating these polar symptoms in our literature. But wait a minute, next slide. If we go back to the old man, then look, you're asking for sources, the footnote of paragraph 213, you see that Hahnemann says you should not prescribe, in fact, nux vomica if the patient is mild disposition. Okay? And this HEINER FREI has translated into a contraindication. So there are reasons to prescribe a remedy: irritable, contradictory, etc. nux vomica, and there are reasons to not prescribe nux vomica when the patient is mild. So there is against and in favor of. Understand? And from there, it is just one step to mathematics. Next slide. Is to have a formula which expresses this. And then we speak about the polar difference. The formula is very simple. You take the sum of the degrees of the symptoms of the patient. Say the patient has 3 symptoms. For one remedy, you add the degrees, and then minus the sum of the degrees of the polar symptoms. If this is still a little abstract for you, maybe, don't worry, I'll give you precise examples in the next slides. But let me already explain to you this polar difference, like the patient or opposite to the patient. When it is higher, it means the chances for the remedy are better. When it is lower or negative, it is a contraindication. And let's just look how this affects repertorization in the next slide. This is a repertorization where we see aggravations from stooping, waking, and warm air, and where there is an amelioration after sleep. And you see, this is the classical analysis, that sepia as well as pulsatilla come out strongly. Okay? Now, when you follow the red arrow, when you click on that little yin-yang sign, which is also an opposite, you may be familiar with, then the one click changes the screen into the following one. If you hit enter, which needs a little explanation, some lines are added on top. Or let's say there are two graphs now. The one is, you see patient symptoms, you recognize the 4 symptoms there. And then the second part of the table is the opposite polar symptoms. And you see, for example, for the first one, it's aggravation during stooping. And then the number 1 in the second part is amelioration stooping. Okay? So we have the symptoms of the patient on the upper part and the opposite symptoms on the lower part. And then the mathematics are on the 4 lines on the top. So we have first the sum of symptoms. That's okay, that is just information. But the second line, the second number, is the more important one. So that let's look at the, I cannot read these numbers on my small printout. So the polarity analysis for Drosera is 7, because you can see that the sum of degrees of the upper part is 3 plus 2 plus 2. You see that? 7. This is the polar symptom sum, you could say. And then when you go to the lower part, you see that for this remedy there is nothing. There is a 0. So this is why there is on the third line a 0, and then the polarity difference 7 minus 0 remains a 0. That is different if you look at the sepia, where you have a 11. Wait a minute, is it 11? No, 13 minus 7, because you have 7 sum of degrees on the lower part of the table. You're still following me? And you have a 6. Yeah. You see? So this is the polar difference. This is the line just on top of the graph, of the waffle graph. This is the polar difference. That's the important number. And I don't know if you have realized it already, but the striking point here in this analysis, in this concrete and real case, is that in the previous slide, the regular analysis, pulsatilla and sepia were first. Okay? If we go now to the polar analysis and the polarity difference of the same symptoms, we see that sepia and pulsatilla are second and third, and in addition, they have red flags. They have red flags in the lower part, so it means no good, too much contraindication for these remedies, and appears another unknown candidate. So far, Drosera is the first possibility. So this is just how this translation of this approach of polar symptoms into mathematics can really change your how shall I say, repertorization is offering possibilities. And so this is another analysis. It just tells you, hey, wait a minute, maybe not sepia pulsatilla, look for Drosera. Okay, one click of a button, Drosera. You wouldn't think about it. Okay, with a repertory based on general symptoms. Okay, Drosera. Now this means that we have to do this, the next slide, we have in fact 2 possibilities in our program, REPERTORIES, our project. In the first one, some people may remember that the polar symptom analysis has been initiated even in the radar times, so 2005, etc., and has been taken over in REPERTORIES, yes. So this is existing, the regular polar symptom analysis is still existing, but then a few years ago we were happy to line up with HEINER FREI, and we have also implemented the polarity analysis itself, which is a copyrighted method approach by HEINER FREI. And with the difference between, let's say, our REPERTORIES polar symptom analysis and the polarity analysis is mainly that we use, or the polarity analysis uses, the therapeutic pocketbook by HEINER FREI. So we have the Bönninghausen therapeutic pocketbook, and HEINER FREI has made some corrections, some additions, some changes to degrees and remedies for his experience, because knowledge evolves. And the therapeutic book is, as I say, was 1846, and knowledge evolves. And so HEINER FREI has been updating it and critically reviewing it, and so the difference is that the polarity analysis is using his approach. Just to show you one more example, and no, let's skip this one, go one more, because we started like 15 minutes late. This is another case with 5 symptoms. You can see the 5s on the top are the patient's symptoms. And then you see the opposites for all 4 of them, in fact. And you see that the iodium is the remedy that has no opposites. And when you compare it to the next remedy, which is magnetis, which one, Luke?
It's Arctis.
Arctis, okay. That iodium is to be preferred because it covers 18. It has a score of 18 as to 10. And this is a case of HEINER FREI himself. It is in fact the first case of his book on polarity analysis, only analyzed through radar opus, through the HEINER FREI module, and the desired remedy was indeed iodium, and is shown out very clearly as the first runner-up in this screen of radar opus. Okay, so just to explain to you, it works. The last section I would like to tell you is about Bönninghausen and synthesis. You may be again a little bit surprised to know what are we going to say about Bönninghausen and synthesis. Well, in fact, a lot. Next slide. We have basically been adding the repertories of Bönninghausen and BOGER to synthesis time ago. And even in version 9.2 or 1, even 9.1, yeah, 9.1 was it, okay? So these 2 repertories of Bönning, or 3 if you like, and these 3 repertories of BOGER. Ah yeah, by the way, I'm very excited about this idea, but BOGER also made 3 repertories, and I think I put the dates. Yeah, I put the dates. Do you know that the BOGER Bönninghausen repertory was thick like this, the synoptic key like this, and the general analysis like this, and the size also went down? Same evolution. They did not generalize the symptoms 1500 times to make a completely diluted remedy. No. They looked for the genius symptoms. They condensed the repertory into more relevant and more relevant and more relevant. Okay, Bönninghausen and BOGER. Okay. Now, what did we do? What has been the procedure? We created an empty repertory. We added all the symptoms of the repertory, put all the remedies, we printed it and compared it. Okay, and then next slide. We have chosen to add these BOGER Bönninghausen repertories to the, no, we added links. Yeah, I want to explain the procedure we did to show the level of precision we try to pursue. We added links to every symptom in BOGER Bönninghausen. Next slide. Saying to which symptom in synthesis will we link this one. So this is a print screen of Bönninghausen's pocketbook, with the chapter Mind and Sensorium, and then Mind and Hopelessness, and the little note there says this symptom, the 46, if I remember well, yes, 46 remedies of this rubric will be copied to synthesis to the symptom Mind Despair. This we have been done for all the thousands of symptoms in all these repertories. I can say 10,000 of symptoms, okay? And then, one next slide, you will find back, if you compare the 2 screens on top of each other, the Bönninghausen additions, like the Agnus, you see Agnus on the Bönninghausen screen, AGN, okay? You see in synthesis AGN B2. So for every addition, we have with very great precision indicated what is the source of these BOGER Bönninghausen repertories. Okay. Now doing that work was not so easy. I mean, even conceiving how to do that work was not so easy. And why? Next slide. Because we still have the truth, the fact of the difference between the Kent and the Bönninghausen or Bönninghausen symptoms. So we have the specific symptoms, stomach pain, cramping, noon, where in Bönninghausen you would at the best find something like stomach noon. Or we have eye pain, burning, canty, inner, not outer, in Kent. And at best you would have canty or inner canty in the Bönninghausen approach. And we started to try and squeeze Bönninghausen symptoms into the Kentian structure, but we have given up very quickly and then took the decision. Actually, after 3 or 4 months trying, we restarted the work. And we restarted the work. I will explain you later how, but I first have to give you this little, let's skip it. Okay, not critical. So we have decided to not make a mixture of the rubrics. And so in a chapter, as you will see, Kentian symptoms as before, with Kentian remedies as before. So in synthesis, when you have a specific rubric, it means this contains the remedies with the specific information. Okay? But every chapter does have more general symptoms. And like in stomach chapter, in synthesis, you will find noon. And you will find noon in several ways. You will find pain noon, which is a little more precise. You will find pain noon pressing, which is even more precise. Or you will find pain noon eating after gnawing, which is another level of precision. Which means that because of this work, today in synthesis, you will have the levels of precision of the symptom that you wish. Depending upon what your patient is saying, you can just say something is happening in the stomach at noon, or you can be very precise and say it's a gnawing sensation after eating at noon, only at eating after noon. So I think this gives a very precise scope and makes it possible to hit the remedy and find the solution for your patient in a very interesting way. As you see in the next slide, many of these symptoms will end up in generals. General stooping after aggravates, etc. Stooping itself aggravates, and so on and so on. This has been an incredible work, and at last, and I'm finishing, I'm almost at my last slides, I would like to thank the next slide, Dr. SIVARAMAN from India, who has been working with us in this work, on this job, and in the end even came to Ghent, to my city, and lived with us for a number of months, to do all this work of the integration of Bönninghausen works into synthesis in this precise way. Dr. SIVARAMAN passed away in 2017, but I'm still very grateful for his dedication and his incredible precision. Now, I've been saying a lot of things, I know, and I've been jumping, and I've been maybe from time to time too excited, and maybe I've been leading you astray. So let me just summarize you in a very concrete way when we speak about tools, because at least me as a lecturer, you know me, I like to say something which is practical, you can use as of tomorrow. So what can you do with this? And I think I've been trying to explain to you, there is some information there, and if you're a Kentian, and Kentian I don't mean only Kent's repertory, there is some information there which is valuable and which may help you. And we have 4 levels of information as laid out in this slide. And we have the pocket book in its original way, translated into all these languages. The German is, of course, the facsimile, which I got from my friend Peter Wind in Germany. Then we have the Bönninghausen repertory, TBR2, because it is the second edition of George Dimitriadis. We have the therapeutic pocket book of HEINER FREI, which is also translated in all these languages. And then at last we have synthesis today on Red Europus is the 2009, which does have Kent, but also Bönninghausen's information integrated in all languages. And thanks to my Turkish friends, also in Turkish since recently. then on the level, next slide, of the analysis, we have basically three approaches. We have the regular analysis, which means you can use any of these repertories, including synthesis, to add symptoms to your cases. Why not? Or you can use the polar symptom analysis of radar opus, or probably even better, use the polarity analysis of HEINER FREI. Now, all this has been bundled now, and I don't know, Luke, are you able to switch to the website of Radar Opus? To open your Radar Opus, in fact. Can you do this?
Yes.
Or is it, you can do it, okay.
Yeah.
So look, on the Radar Opus, in your program, there is an icon, web shop. Can you show that icon?
Uh-huh.
And when you open that icon, in fact, just to be practical, you are led to a website which is showing what we have available, and then you can type, just don't need to worry about the umlaut, etc. You just type Hausen, H-A-U-S-E-N, H-A-U-S-E-N.
They're all actually at the top already because of the promotion, so that makes it even easier.
You have three items?
Yeah, can you see the screen?
I have this black hole in my screen.
And Luke, I can see.
But I think
we can see it. Yeah.
You can see it. Voila. So these are the three avenues you can practically go. You can take the pocketbook as such. Oh wait, it's reloading and reloading. Luke, you have to just abide.
It's okay. It's here.
Can you type Hausen and then just don't do anything anymore?
Yeah, I mean they are at the top there. In
so
promotion.
You have the Bönninghausen pocketbook as such. There you have the advantage of the several languages, and that's all you need. Then you have the HEINER FREI with the polarity analysis and the specific thing. That's a bundle as well. And then you have Dimitriadis with his bundle of his three approaches. And so, in my next slide is in fact the thank you slide, hoping that this is practical for you, that it will help you to cure a few more patients, especially if you're in despair and not finding the very specific Kantian symptom.
And Luke, can you just show where that button is one more time in case if anyone missed it right in Radar Opus to go to the web shop?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's this button here. So a shopping cart called Shop.
Thank you. And thank you, Frederick. That was a wonderful webinar. You did so great dealing with our late start of being able to bring that in, and very interesting facts of the history and clinical uses and practicality of everything. I hope everyone has enjoyed the presentation, and gotten some takeaways from it. As promised, we are going to be having a little bit of a Q&A right now. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them now in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can with the time that we have available. Although Frederick, just to let you know, some messages are coming now in the chat, and they're saying, wow, I had many questions to begin with, and you answered so many of them that they had. So without even having to ask a Q&A, you did a fabulous job of answering them, and other messages are coming in saying thank you and thank you. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A now, and we will be happy to address them. And yes, just as a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and we will make it available on the Radar Opus Academy website. So just give us a couple of days, do a little bit of video editing and tweaking and all that good stuff, and then we will be posting it on the Radar Opus Academy website. And in order to find that, just pop to radaropus.com and click on video in the upper menu, and that will take you to the Academy where you can see all of our training videos. And Frederick, just so many messages are coming through and saying, the explanations have been very helpful. Oh, here's one. The integration of Bönninghausen, does it always, the integration of Bönninghausen, does it do away with the individual, the chat's moving up, Bönninghausen repertory?
I'm not understanding.
I think I can explain it. What the question is asking is whether the integration of Bönninghausen into synthesis means you don't need the smaller BOGER Bönninghausen and therapeutic pocketbook in your program?
No, I don't think so, because even if I have been saying we have been faithful not to put Bönninghausen information in a similar Kantian rubric, if we have been trying to be faithful in the separation, we have been it has been necessary to use the existing synthesis structure for the Bönninghausen symptoms. We had the 40 chapters, for example. Bönninghausen never had 40 chapters. There were 5 chapters plus concordances. So you see there is a difference between the Bönninghausen pocketbook and the synthesis. The remedies may be the same, but to find them may be more easy. So what I can tell you, what I often do, if I have such a case where there is not enough modalities, or I would like to know on the basis of a few more general, let's say genius symptoms, I think it's a better term, what is the possible remedies, I would go to my search screen and I would type like motion aggravates. Just motion aggravates. Yeah, exactly. Voila. And then you see in the Bönninghausen pocketbook, you see all the modalities where there is motion aggravates, and you can choose from it. You see? If you do the same motion aggravates into synthesis, you will have so much more symptoms. So it will be harder to find it. So yeah, Amel lying, whatever, you see, this is exactly what I'm trying to say. So through the search screen, you can easily find the Bönninghausen symptoms, and then you will have a more focused choice. If you look in the repertory, you know, in our search function, we can use in one repertory, in many repertories, etc., etc. Okay?
Yeah, and also for researching remedies, it's useful to look at them through the prism of smaller repertories and not just synthesis. So, like Frederik was saying, the therapeutic pocketbook contains genius symptoms. So if you were to do a search on pulsatilla looking at only grade 3 and 4, you would be able to get a really nice view of the genius symptoms through the pocketbook.
And there were a few other questions that came in. The first one was, is there going to be a German version of TBR2?
TBR2 is in the hands of George Dimitriadis, and I'm not aware that there is a translation upcoming, but the best would be that you contact him through his website and ask him. The more times he gets the question, the more he will be tempted to do that.
That sounds great. And then another question coming in on REPERTORIES. Can you click the yin-yang icon and convert any repertorization you're working on into a polar analysis view?
No, this is only for the Bönninghausen pocketbook, because this is the one where we have added those polarities to the repertory itself.
And I guess I'll just add to that, and you'll
therapeutic pocketbook, yeah.
And you'll notice that the rubrics themselves have that yin-yang icon, which will let you know that that is a symptom that has polarity with it.
Exactly.
So when you're looking in the repertory, even if you are using a repertory that has polar symptoms, it's not necessarily every single rubric, but you'll see. I don't know, Luke, is it possible for you to pull that up, or are you doing
Luke,
something else?
Can you? We're seeing your screen still.
Yes,
Luke, please
yes,
be aware.
yes.
So can you add to the analysis a symptom of Bönninghausen?
Sure.
Of Bönninghausen, I'm sorry, which does not have a polarity like in the chapter of regions or something.
Yeah. So we could put emaciation in general.
Yeah. Can you show the screen now?
Yeah.
So I cannot see the screen myself, but I see it. So you see three symptoms on the top, and only for 2 of them there is an opposite polar symptom in the lower part of the graph.
Okay. So I hope that's clear.
The P between brackets means there is a polar symptom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then another question kind of coming in. I'm going to paraphrase the question. Another question coming in about kind of like the clinical sides of things is, when you're working with someone, why might you choose to do polarity analysis with one client over another?
Yeah, well, the reply I have given kind of. Of course, HEINER FREI would say, I do this all the time. And he has to do it all the time, and he has to be very savvy and very knowledgeable and very successful doing it. For the most of the people, and also my case, we like to have tools, and polarity analysis is like a very interesting tool. And so every now and then we want to use this tool, or maybe some other time we want to use some limitation to a family tool, or limit the analysis to a family. It's just another approach, or we just go totally classical, or we have the analysis and we say I don't see the remedy, and we use the VES, the Vidulkas expert system. There's another tool. So it's basically, if the use of a new tool, for those who it's new, such as the polarity analysis or the Bönninghausen repertoire of Dimitriadis, etc., can help you every now and then to cure one more patient, I think it's worthwhile disposing of different tools.
And then we just had a question in case if someone is receiving, watching this webinar, maybe you don't already own the program. All these features are available in Radar Opus. So these books, these features, they're available in Radar Opus as add-ons. So once you own the program, then you can choose to add these into your program.
I would say one of the other things you can do is to make a normal analysis and synthesis, and then alongside that, make a Bönninghausen polarity analysis, and then you can check the leading contenders from your normal analysis to see if there are any contraindications if you have strong modalities in that case. That could be a useful way to use both.
Going back, Renita has a question, kind of adding to the one I paraphrased for her, and she wants me to ask you very specifically, what would the client say that would make you think that you would do polarity analysis?
Well, in my personal case, and these cases do come every now and then, is those patients who are not very precise and speak in a more general way about their complaints. You see? So they may give a modality, but not a precise modality. They say the back is worse from motion, but which motion they don't know. It's no motion. Is it then motion every motion? No, not every motion. You see, these patients that are speaking in more vague and more general terms, they don't try to squeeze or convince them that it is only from rising from stooping. Just say, okay, I go with the words of the patient. Motion is an issue, the back is the issue. You already have two sets of information that will help you when you have the Bönninghausen approach.
I think one of the things to say with HEINER FREI's polarity analysis is that he used it for ADHD, and the reason that he did that was because all of the mental symptoms were common to the condition, so they became unreliable for him and not useful, and therefore he developed this system where the patient gets a checklist and they have to, they're sort of trained, the mother and father are trained how to fill it out, and then they put on, all of the modalities that are most strong for the patient. So it's a way of bypassing the common symptoms.
Okay. Is there another question left?
I'm just replying to that one.
One's asking,
privately.
is polarity analysis necessary in every case?
What is?
Someone wants to know if polarity analysis is necessary in every case.
Necessary. Necessary is not the word I would like to use. It's possible. It's probably possible in every case, maybe not. I would repeat what I was saying. Let's become knowledgeable and experienced in some of our best tools, and polarity analysis, George's approach, etc. are sure parts to consider.
Thank you, Fred. I really enjoyed the comparison between Kent and Bönninghausen. That was really interesting for me. And Yeah, a great talk. I think we could wrap it up, partly because I have to go and help put the baby to bed. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yeah. Any questions left? Contact our team or myself through the dealers to the people who represent our work in your country. There was one email you may have seen, so we'd be happy to explain whatever is needed. And if you want to start tomorrow, you just go to the web shop, or even today, you get it in an automated way straight away.
Well, thank you so much, Fred, and thank you so much everyone for being here. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and enjoy the rest of your day.